agree. Here it comes.
There we go. Okay, everybody. Hey, glad to be back in the saddle with everybody this week. I had to go out of town a couple of days to do some business, and now I'm back, and I appreciate seeing everyone here. So please, what we're going to do today, hey there, Bhavananda, I see your hand. All you ever see with Bhavananda is the hand. There's no real person there. She's kind of like that
That's,
guy in
that,
the
that,
chair.
this is scary to look at.
Oh, is that tooth?
So just that face.
Oh,
That face.
that face. Okay. All right, here we go, guys. So this chapter is called Attaining the Supreme. It's chapter 8 in the Bhagavad-gītā. And as customary, we're going to go ahead and start with a little Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we won't make this long, and then we'll do a kirtan later. All right, can everybody hear the harmonium? Raise your hand. There you go.
Yes.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 Om Namo Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Shri Krishna, Jai 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 Shri Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Jai.
Very beautiful. So, okay.
Denise is with us as well.
Denise is here too. Well, good.
Oh, and Drew's just joined as well. He said he's not in a good position to be active, but he's going to be listening.
That's fine. That's fine. The gang is all here and the party's on, y'all. So this Bhagavad-gītā is just wonderful, isn't it? The song of God, that we have access to this great song of God. And we can read it anytime we want to. It's thousands and thousands of years old, but it's as pertinent this very moment as it was 5,000 years ago, as it will be 5 billion years from now. The absolute truth is the absolute truth at every moment throughout all eternity. And it does not change. It is unchangeable. So this beautiful absolute truth has been given to us by Lord Sri Krishna, who's descended to this material world for our benefit, right? So yada yada hi dharma sha, glanir bhavati bharatar. So whenever there's a decline of religion, religious purposes, and a incline of irreligious activities, at that time Krishna descends himself. And he speaks this Bhagavad-gītā. And when he does, he explains to us how to come back home, back to Godhead. So we're in a material world. And in the material world, we are experiencing birth, death, old age, and disease. Just this weekend, I had one of my dear friends die this weekend. And then this weekend, another friend of ours had a birth. So we're seeing this birth and this death are taking place simultaneously. And there are literally hundreds of thousands of people dying at every moment, hundreds of thousands of people being born at every moment. And we're just somewhere along the path from childhood to youth to old age. So at this point, we have to be prepared to meet Krishna, just like we see in the Bible. It says to be absent the body is to be in the presence of God, the presence of the Lord. So when we leave this body, we will have the opportunity to be in the presence of the Lord. So we want to be sure that we are mindful of Krishna. We want to know Krishna. We want to know who is God. And in the world, if you go up and down any street in America, and you can ask people who is God, the majority of people do not have a clue who God actually is. And the purpose of our existence is to know God. There's no other purpose other than to develop our relationship again with God, because the relationship's ongoing. God's giving us everything we see around us, all the pleasures that we experience in our life, all the life itself. He's the life of our life. So to acknowledge God in that environment and to develop a loving relationship with him is the actual true purpose of this human form of life. And yoga is that system by which one can become connected with God again. So this particular chapter, I love this chapter. It's short and sweet, by the way, but it packs a pretty powerful punch. So in this chapter, we're going to learn a few things. Does anybody know, for an example, what the Adhyatma is? That's a good question for us. Arjuna starts out with questions here. And those questions are, what is Brahman? What is the self? What is the fruitive activities? What are fruitive activities? What is this material manifestation? What are the demigods? Please explain this to me. So Krishna describes it to him shortly as Adhyatma means the self. So that's the name of our soul, Atma, Adhyatma. And then Adibhuta is this material manifestation. Krishna is going to describe that. So what you might call the universal form, the material manifestation itself, or what we might call the Virata Rupa, God's body, his material manifestation. And then Adidaiva is God's universal form, which he describes later in the Bhagavad-gītā. And then also all of the demigods, which make up the management system under God's control in this material world. We like to call them angels. And there are literally millions of them. In one place it says there's 33 million, and in another place it says there's 90 million in the Srimad Bhagavatam. So there's a lot of demigods, and those demigods are very close to God, and they're empowered by the Lord for the purposes of maintenance of the universe. So he goes on to ask, because remember what we said, Tadvidi pranipratena pariprashanena sevya upadekshanti teganam gyaninastavadarshinaha. When we want to know the truth, we have to ask the proper source of truth. So Arjuna has now become a disciple of Krishna. He's asking him these wonderful questions, and we're getting to hear the answers to these wonderful questions about the mysteries of life. So who is the Lord of sacrifice? How does he live in the body, O Madhusudana? And how can those engaged in devotional service know you even at the time of death? So Krishna describes these four positions, and he goes on to say that he is Adi Yagya. Adi Yagya means the Lord of sacrifice. So God is in every heart. Just like you're in your own heart, Krishna's there with you. He's never left. He never will leave. He's the super soul. And so therefore, we are being literally guided from within. Our karma is being manifest according to our previous activities. All of this is being overseen by the super soul, our So in that situation, Krishna explains that everything that we do should be done as a sacrifice for the Lord's pleasure, because everything is being given to us by the Lord. Therefore, everything we eat, for an example, we should offer it to the Lord. Our thoughts should be surrounded by thoughts of the Lord, and everything should remind us of Krishna. Everything. That's why we chant Hare Krishna. That's why we follow and listen to these Shastric literatures. That's why we associate with the Vaishnavas. And that's why we're coming together tonight. So there's four things. Adhyatma, the soul, the self. Adibhuta, this material manifestation. Adidaiva, the universal form and the demigods. And then Adiyagya, or the Lord of Sacrifice, which is Shirodakshai Vishnu, which is the super soul inside everyone's body. So now we're going to start with text 3, and whoever the first person that raises their hand gets to start chanting. Go ahead, got to see a hand. There's one. Susan's got one up. Go for it, Susan.
Okay, just tell me how far to go. Or
No, I'll just stop you along the way. Yeah.
Okay. The Supreme Lord said, the indestructible, transcendental living entity is called Brahman, and its eternal nature is called the self. Action pertaining to the development of these material bodies is called karma, or fruitive activities. Physical nature is known to be endlessly mutable. The universe is the cosmic form of the Supreme Lord, and I am that Lord, represented as the Supersoul dwelling in the heart of every embodied being. And whoever at the time of death quits his body, remembering me alone, at once attains my nature. Of this there is no doubt. Whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body, that state he will attain without fail. Therefore, Arjuna, you should always think of me in the form of Krishna, and at the same time carry out your prescribed duty of fighting. With your activities dedicated to me and your mind and intelligence fixed on me, you will attain me without doubt.
Okay, I want to stop you there just 1 second. And if we go back, so remember those questions that Arjuna asked, what is the self, et cetera, and so on. So this part, the indestructible transcendental living entity, is called Brahman, and his eternal nature is called Adhyatma. So that's the self. So Krishna explained that to him in that third text. And he explains that the actions pertaining to the development of material bodies of a living entity is called karma, or fruitive activities. So when we act separately from the Lord, we get karma. But when we act on behalf of the Lord, there is no karma. So karma is the only thing that's not eternal, actually. Karma can be changed. Karma can be finished. You can have no karma if your mind is situated in Krishna consciousness. So the other thing was that the physical nature, which is constantly changing, that was the Adibhuta portion of this, the material manifestation. And so the Adidaiva, again, is the universal form of the Lord, which includes the demigods and so forth. And then the last thing was Adiyagya, which is the super soul in the heart of every embodied being. And if we think about it that way, that the Lord is the Lord of sacrifice. In other words, one of God's names is Hrishikesh, because your senses are expansions of God's senses. So he tastes what you taste. He senses what you sense. See what I'm saying? So this is truly a temple of God that we're living in. Whatever we're doing in this temple, God is fully aware of, and he's experiencing that as well. So we want to do that as an offering. So in text 5, when you read, whoever at the time, the end of this life quits his body, remembering me alone at once attains my nature, of this there is no doubt. That is a huge verse that Prabhupada quoted all the time. And if you can click on your Sanskrit for a second, can you do that? Okay, I'll read it a couple of times. If anybody else wants to read it, you can read this one too. This is a very important verse. Antakale chamameva smaran mukva kalevaram ya prayati samadbhavam yati nasyatra sangsayaha. So that verse translated And whoever at the end of this life quits his body, remembering me alone, at once attains my nature. Of this there is no doubt. The importance of Krishna consciousness in this verse is stressed, because the real point of the material world is death, isn't it? The real point of the material world is death, not eternal life. You may have eternal life, but you're transing bodies all the time. So there's no continuity. You've had one family this life, you'll have another family next life. You have friends in this life, you'll have other friends in another life. So if you want consistency, you've got to go beyond this mundane temporal circumstance that we're in. So therefore, Krishna says it's important to remember the Lord at all cost. I mean, you know, whatever you can do to bring about your Krishna consciousness, this is as important to you as any function you could perform in your life. More important than the job you have, because the food that you eat is temporary, the job you have may be temporary. Even this mortal family and all this stuff, they come and go. But Krishna is there for you forever. So it says, therefore, in the person should incessantly chant the Maha Mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So there may be so many impediments for a person who is chanting Hare Krishna. It could be all kind of problems and reasons why you don't want to chant or couldn't chant. But nonetheless, tolerating all these impediments, one should continue to chant Hare Krishna, so that at the end of one's life, one can have the full benefit of Krishna consciousness. So this is, I would think, a very, very, very important verse. Prabhupada has quoted this verse many, many times. Anybody want to read the Sanskrit one time? Susan, you want to read that Sanskrit? Yeah. Text 5.
I had to mute because my dog was barking. Sorry.
Oh, okay. That's all right.
Anta kale chamam ave smaran muktva kale varam ya prayate samadbhavam yate nashtatra samsaya.
Beautiful. Yeah. Anybody else want to chant that one? It's one you want to memorize. Bhagavad, you want to chant?
I'll try. Anta kali jamameva smaramutva kalivaram yaprayati samadbhavam yati nashti atri samshaha.
Sometimes when you see a Y go into the next verse, it's yati nashtyatra. So nashtyat, it kind of goes right into the next one on Sanskrit like that. So antakale chamameva smaran muktva kalevaram ya prayati samadbhavam yati nashtyatra sangsayaha. So Krishna guarantees that if you remember him at the time of death, you will attain to the Lord. Because in the very next verse, which Prabhupada quotes all the time, yam yam vapi smaran bhavan tajante kalevaram tam tam evaiti konte ya sadatad bhava bhavitaha. So yam yam vapi smaran bhavam, whatever, at all, you remember at time of death, that's what you shall attain. So it's so important that we keep chanting this Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, we keep meeting, we keep engaging ourselves in devotional service every day. So does anybody want to read that one too? Yam yam vapi smaran bhavan jante kalevaram tang tang ivaiti konte ya sadad tad bhava bhavitaha. Anybody want to try that one? Susan, you want to try?
I'll try. Yam yam vape smaram bhavam tyajite ante kalavaram tam tam evate konteya sada tad bhava bhavatada. Wait, bhava bhavita.
There you go, bhavita. And when you see a dot underneath the H, it generally has that aha.
Bhavata.
Yeah, bhavitaha.
Bhavita.
Sadad tad bhava bhavitaha.
Siddhartha, Bhava,
Yeah.
Bhava.
So, and this Sanskrit's fun stuff, and it's a little difficult for us Westerners, right? I mean, it has been, right? But when you study Sanskrit, you actually begin to see that the words that are Sanskrit are also in English, they're in Spanish, they're in, Greek, they're everywhere because all our languages came from that. Now, I'll see a hand up. Is there right there on my screen? Did somebody put a hand up? No.
That was me actually
Okay.
earlier on, just to say that Stella has joined us as well.
Hey, she went out to Sadhu Sangha, didn't she? Yeah, we saw her dancing out there, man. She was having a blast. That was fun.
Yeah. Also, hi, Baba Hanuman.
So the festival that was going on out there in Dallas, can you tell us what your thoughts are on that, Stella, just quickly?
Sorry, y'all were on mute. Yeah, that's what I told Ranga earlier. It was just a refreshing of my spiritual journey. I came alive again. We have that condition of forgetting and remembering, and it was definitely a festival of remembering.
I love that. I love that. So 3 days of chanting, feasting, and dancing.
Absolutely, it was beautiful.
That's better. Good. Well, that's every year. So next, and I think in September they're going to do it in Mexico City at a beautiful resort. So if anybody can go and y'all want to go, I think I am definitely going to this next one. So if you want to go together, we can kind of make it a trip. It's going to be at a beautiful resort in Mexico. There's some kind of river that flows through it. You can swim and float around. So it should be pretty cool. So if anybody wants to go, we'll get you the details. It's not really available yet. But Ekachakra Pran, whom Susan, you know, and some of you guys know him, he came here and stayed a few days with us. And his future wife, Takarani Devi Dasi, her and her family are organizing this in Mexico. So it's going to be pretty cool. I'm sure it'll be a good event, with them putting it on like that down there. Okay, so text 6, I think. Does anybody else want to chant that one, or you want to keep moving? Everybody good? Anybody else want a piece of that one? No? Okay. Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam tajan chante kalevaram tam tam evite ti konteya sadad tad bhava bhavitaha. Tam tam evite konteya. Yeah, that's it. All right, Prabhupada quotes that quite a bit, so that's one you might want to add to your repertoire. And if you would continue to read, Susan, a couple more if you don't mind. 7, text 7. Is that right?
Yes. Therefore, Arjuna, you should always think of me in the form of Krishna, and at the same time carry out your prescribed duty of fighting. With your activities dedicated to me, and your mind and intelligence fixed on me, you will attain me without doubt. He who meditates on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, his mind constantly engaged in remembering me, undeviated from the path, he, O Partha Arjuna, he is sure to reach me. One should meditate upon the Supreme Person as the one who knows everything, as he who is the oldest, who is the controller, who is the smarter than the smallest, who is the maintainer of everything, who is beyond all material conception, who is inconceivable, and who is always a person. He is luminous like the sun, and being transcendental, he is beyond this material nature.
There you have it. So that verse alone, text 9, if you want to know how to meditate on the Lord, Krishna just described that. Now, he does that several times in Bhagavad-gītā and in other places in Srimad Bhagavatam where he describes how you can meditate on the Lord. But just know that he knows everything. He's the oldest, yet he's the newest, the youngest, right? He's the controller. He's smaller than the smallest, the maintainer of everything, beyond all material conception, inconceivable, but always a person, luminous like the sun, transcendental beyond this material nature. So that's very, very nice that we have some way then that we can meditate on God and remain Krishna conscious. So who wants to pick it up from there?
I can do 10 if you want.
Go ahead. Denise is there. She had her hand up too.
Oh, did Denise? No, Denise can go first.
You want to read, Denise?
Sure.
Okay, please.
All right. And I think I have a different version. My words are slightly different than y'all's, so just a heads up.
No,
At the time of death, with the mind immovable, armed with devotion and the strength of discipline, focusing vital breath between the brows, one attains the supreme divine spirit of man. I shall teach you in summary about the state that scholars of sacred lore call eternal, the state ascetics enter, freed from passion, which some men seek in the celibate life.
what version?
Oh, sorry. I have translated by Barbara Stoller Miller.
Do you have the Gita as it is? You don't have the actual Bhagavad-gītā as it is?
Mm-mm.
Yeah. I'll tell you how you can get it. It's free. It's online, and it's under vedabase.io. And you can just go right to vedabase.io, and all of these translations that are not interpreted. In other words, they're just right out of the mouth of Krishna given to us. You see what I'm saying? Because there's thousands of interpretations of the Bible and the Bhagavad-gītā and so forth and so on. And many times people will add an interpretation of their own to it or a slant of their own to it. So what we have done is we're making a study of Bhagavad-gītā as it is, because as it is that way we get the straight shot, translated word for word right out of the mouth of Krishna, and without the need of any further interpretation. So if you can, I don't know if you can do it on your phone or not. That way we could all kind of follow with you, because that's the actual Bhagavad-gītā that we are studying. And I'm proud that you have a Bhagavad-gītā. That's amazing. I want you to get a Bhagavad-gītā as it is. Rangavati, we need to make sure that Denise gets one of those. All right? We're going to do that for you.
Okie dokie, we will do.
You can go
If she sends me her address, I'll send her one.
the link for vedabase.io, and you'll have that, Denise. Okay? Is that good? Yeah, and then next time we'll pick it up and let you read, because that way the version will be a little closer, if that's okay. All right? Appreciate that. So, Rangavati, you want to pick it up at 11?
Yep, okay. 11. Persons who are learned in the Vedas, who utter Omkara, and who are great sages in the renounced order, enter into Brahman. Desiring such perfection, one practices celibacy. I shall now briefly explain to you this process by which one may attain salvation. The yogic situation is that of detachment from all sensual engagements, closing all the doors of the senses and fixing the mind on the heart and the life air at the top of the head. One establishes himself in yoga. After being situated in this yoga practice and vibrating the sacred syllable Om, the supreme combination of letters, if one thinks of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and quits his body, he will certainly reach the spiritual planets. 14. One who is always remembers me without deviation, I am easy to obtain, O son of Purta, because of his constant engagement in devotional service. After attaining me, the great souls who are yogis in devotion never return to this temporary world, which is full of miseries, because they have attained the highest perfection.
Okay, so Krishna just described the Ashtanga system of raising the life air, closing all the doors of the senses, fixing the mind on the heart and the life air at the top of the head. establish yourself in yoga. After being situated in this yoga practice and vibrating the syllable Om, if one thinks of the Supreme Personality of God and quits his body, he will certainly reach the supreme spiritual planets. So that is the ancient system. And if you look in the Bhagavad-gītā, you'll see that there are people, yogis, who had competency in leaving their body and going back to the spiritual world. In this age and time, this is not necessarily recommended. The method is to call out the name of God. So that calling of the name of God is the Sankirtan movement that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu started for the Yuga Dharma. And the Yuga Dharma is during this Kali, it says, Harinama, 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 Eva Kevalam, Kalo Nasteva, Nasteva Gatir Antyataha. So Harinam, chant the holy name, chant the holy name, chant the holy name. In this age of Kali, there is really no other way, no other way, no other way. So even if you look in other scriptures like the Bible, it says anyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. One should call on the name of the Lord from the rising to the setting of the sun. Hallowed be thy name. In the beginning was the Word was God, the Word was with God, like that. So this chanting of the Maha Mantra is actually advised for us in this age of Kali to engage in remembrance of the Lord at all times. Because by calling out the name of the beloved, we will remember the Lord in that situation. Now, so and he says that it's easy to obtain the Lord because of constant engagement in devotional service. So what we have to do is we have to figure out how to make our life kind of revolve around our devotional service. We all have to do that. And then if we can make our lives centered around devotional service so that everything we do reminds us of Krishna, then we will never return to this temporary world which is full of miseries, and we will have attained the highest possible destination of perfection. And then the next verse, text 16, this is one that Prabhupada quotes all the time too. Abrahma bhuvanal loka, Panar arvartinorjuna, mamupetyo tukanteya, Panar janmana vidyate. So where Krishna says from the highest planet in the material world down to the lowest, all are places of misery wherein repeated birth and death takes place. But one who attains to my abode, O son of Kunti, never takes birth again. So all kinds of yogis, karma, jnana, hatha, etc., eventually have to attain devotional perfection in bhakti yoga or Krishna consciousness before they can go to Krishna's transcendental abode and never return to the material world. So when we talk about karma yoga, we're talking about action in the material world, good or bad results. That's taking place in the material world. When we talk about jnana, our knowledge of God, we can learn that here, but it becomes wisdom and applied when it becomes Krishna conscious. So jnana is important to get to know God, or wisdom is important to get to know God, but on the platform of love, you don't care so much about knowledge. You just care about that feeling that you have. Hatha yoga is designed for the body, designed to perfect the body, to take away the pain and suffering of the body and to line the body so that the chakras line up and everything can flow nicely and the energies can flow nicely. But eventually, any kind of yogi will graduate to a state of love and devotion called Bhakti Yoga. And Bhakti Yoga is an eternal yoga. Bhakti Yoga is the end result of all of your yogic disciplines. And it's designed to bring you that experience of love of God, which is the highest transcendental pleasure. And once a person gets that higher taste, they no longer have a desire for this mundane lower taste. And therefore, they can easily transfer beyond the material world. So it's important for us to get that higher taste. In our devotional sadhana practice, we have to be experiencing some transcendental pleasure that comes with this process. And occasionally we'll have a little glimpse of it. But if we're not experiencing the pleasure that we're looking for in this spiritual life, we have to continue to practice it until we get it right. We have to practice it until we got all 8 cylinders firing in line, so to speak. So that's where it is. And then we'll never return to this miserable material world where repeated birth and death, and suffering and so forth take place, which we don't like. So you can go to the higher planets. You go to Brahmaloka, Chandraloka, Indraloka. But even after you go there, you will fall back down to the material world once your karmic reactions have been exhausted. And it's kind of like your bank account. Once your bank account's exhausted, there's no more money. So you got to come back here to the material world. It says they must return to the earth and ultimately get this right. So we have unlimited opportunities, yes, to get it right, but we should not take any chances because the world is a razor's edge. It's literally a razor's edge. One slip and you can experience some very grave unhappiness here. So it's very, very important that we listen to what Krishna says. Abrahma bhuvanal loka panar arvartinorjuna. That from the highest planet, Brahma Loka, all the way down to the lowest planet, all are places of repeated birth and death, miserable places where these activities take place. And it's abhorrent to us to think about dying. It's abhorrent to us to grow old. We don't want that. We don't want it. We want to remain young forever. And in the spiritual world, we will. So, okay, anybody wants to pick it up on text 17? Somebody?
I don't mind. Oh.
Go for it.
By human calculation, 1,000 ages taken together form the duration of Brahma's one day, and such also is the duration of his night. At the beginning of Brahma's day, all living entities become manifest from the unmanifest state, and thereafter, when the night falls, they are merged into the unmanifest again. Again and again, when Brahma's day arrives, all living entities come into being, and with the arrival of Brahma's night, they are helplessly annihilated. Yet there is another unmanifest nature which is eternal and is transcendental to this manifested and unmanifested matter. It is supreme and is never annihilated. When all in this world is annihilated, that part remains as it is. That which the
Vedantis?
Yeah, I'm so bad at that word. Thank you. Describe as unmanifest and infallible, that which is known as the supreme destination, that place from which, having attained it, one never returns. That is my supreme abode. The supreme personality of Godhead, sorry y'all, who is greater than all, is unattainable by unalloyed devotion. Although he is present in his abode, he is all-pervading, and everything is situated within him. O best of the Bharatas, I shall now explain to you the different times at which, passing away from this world, the yogi does or does not come back.
Okay, I want to stop 1 second and just kind of go over one of these verses earlier. When you were reading, it was saying that in text 18, that all during Brahma's day, all living entities become manifest, and then during his night, they become unmanifest. So as long as we're in the material world, we're subject to these forces, right? We got modes of passion, ignorance, and goodness. We're affected by these modes, just like strong currents in the water. We're being pulled around. When we see that we play out our lives based on our attraction to these various modes and to the items of the senses for each of these modes. So people in the mode of ignorance are attracted to certain type of sense gratification. People in the mode of passion are attached to certain types of pleasures, and people in the mode of goodness are attached to completely different types of pleasures. So the idea is that as long as we're attached to this material world, whatever it is you think you want here, Krishna will continue to give you a material body to try to get it. The ultimate conclusion you come to, however, is that that didn't work either. I mean, think about it, guys. You know, you're trying everything in this world to get complete, total happiness and satisfaction and love, right? I mean, that's what we're trying. Every single one of us. We're looking under every rock. It's like Sankhya Yoga. Sankhya Yoga means to look under every rock to find God. Is this God? Is this God? Is this God? Is this God? You see what I'm saying? So in the same way, we don't know what the future will hold for us exactly, do we? We didn't know we would still be alive today. I mean, there's no way to know these things, you know? I mean, what may happen in the next 24 hours? We're seeing so many things happen, and they're profound things. The end of life, the beginning of life, a marriage, a divorce, or this or that. All these different things that are kind of momentous to us in this sojourn. Somehow or another, we've got to flip all that to a state of Krishna consciousness. We have to be mindful of everything in its connection to God. That is the whole process of Krishna consciousness. That's why Prabhupada called it the Krishna consciousness movement. We just want to become God conscious. And the alternative is not so nice because we don't really know where we're going to end up. We don't. I mean, we can have some faith, but look at the world. You know what? There's no guarantees. There's no guarantees here. So at the end of Brahma's night, the arrival of Brahma's night, everybody's helplessly annihilated. So when you hear the word helplessly annihilated, that doesn't sound like a good time to me, right? I mean, I don't know if you guys were looking for that when you signed on in the material world. Oh yeah, I want to be helplessly annihilated. But it just doesn't sound that good. So it should be impetus for us to develop this Krishna consciousness because Krishna says there is another destination. It's known as the supreme destination. When a person attains it, they never return to this miserable material world. And when this world is annihilated, that part remains as it is. That's the part we want to be in, okay? Because when we're in that part, there's no more annihilation. There's no more loss of cognizance. There's no more forgetfulness. At that point, we are Satchidananda Vigraha, filled with eternality. Our bodies are made of Satchidananda Vigraha. We have absolute knowledge of everything. We've come to the final conclusion of everything. And we are madly in love with God. Because who wouldn't be? The most beautiful, wise, wealthy, famous, powerful, yet renounced person who's providing everything to us at every moment. Yes, that gratitude and that pleasure that we derive in that association is actually what we're looking for here, but we can't find it. So the only way that we could ever know that, the only form of a process or yoga or whatever that will take us there is unalloyed devotion. Unalloyed devotion. So think about that and how we can go about getting that. So who wants to read from 23?
I had a little question.
Okay,
Is that all right? Yeah. On those texts 18, 19, when it says at the beginning of Brahma's day, all living entities come into manifestation and then they're unmanifest at his night. We know in Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, it describes creation and how Lord Brahma appeared on the lotus, and then basically Lord Krishna empowered him and enabled him to create this universe that we're in. So is it that every time Lord Brahma wakes up in the morning, he has his breakfast and then he has to go creating everything again, you know, from him being on the lotus flower and everything? Or is it still there, but it's all sort of, I don't know.
It says that with the arrival of Brahma's night, they are helplessly annihilated. So let's see what the purport says about that. The less intelligent those persons try to remain within the material world may be elevated to higher planets and then again must come down to this planet, Earth. During the daytime of Brahma, they can exhibit their activities on higher and lower planets within this material world, but at the coming of Brahma's night, they are all annihilated. In the day, they receive various bodies for material activities, and at night, they no longer have bodies, but remain compact in the body of Vishnu. Just like Krishna says, everything, he's the seed-giving father. All of this is really Krishna's manifestation, either the Virata Rupa in the material world or in the spiritual world. It's his interior energy, superior energy, I should say. Everything is coming in the body of the Lord. So yes, it is unmanifest, and everybody goes to sleep just like you do at night, and then you have to obviously be born again in those daytimes. And sometimes that's, of course, billions of years in between those annihilations. So ultimately, when Brahma's life is finished, everything is annihilated and remains unmanifest for millions and millions of years. And then when Brahma is born again in another millennium, they are again manifest. In this way, they are captivated by the spell of the material world. So, but those intelligent persons who take to Krishna consciousness use this human life fully in the devotional service of the Lord, chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, and thus they transfer themselves, even in this life, to the spiritual planet of Krishna and become eternally blissful there, not being subjected to such repeated births and deaths. So that's Prabhupada's explanation of that one for you. Now, by the way, there are trillions of Brahmas, and they're like little bubbles on the sea of time. You know, they're like little foam bubbles or grains of sand. And all of this is going on simultaneously. So some are being annihilated, some are not, some are this, some are that. This is all a big dream, guys. We're living in a big dream here. This is your dream. And the reason you have what you have, and the reason you are who you are, is because you dreamed it so. This is what you wanted, and now you have it. This is your trip. This is your dream. This is the one you're on. And it can change at any moment simply by desiring it to change. You can make any desire you want now. Let's say that you've had past habits, past problems, past that. You can change that now. You can change your karma now. And you can have this Krishna consciousness if you so desire. You can go back home, back to Godhead if you so desire. Or you can stay in the material world forever if you so desire. It's up to you. Krishna is fulfilling all desires since time immemorial. So what is your desire? So the idea is, to desire God, you need to know who God is. You need to understand more about God. You need to receive that relationship again with God. And the recommended methodology to do that in this life is chanting Hare Krishna. So when you associate with the name of God, you become purified. Even if you're a fallen rascal, even if you're the worst sinner of all, you should still continue on this path of devotional service, chanting Hare Krishna and engaging yourself completely in remembering Krishna as much as possible. Because the alternative is not really that great. You can look around yourself and see what the alternatives are in the material world. Okay, so let's see, that supreme abode, having attained it, one never returns to this place of birth and death. So, all right, did that answer your question, Raghavati? I hope so.
Yes, I think so. It's like a partial devastation. So perhaps all the planets are still just floating around, but they're not populated.
I want to know more
And
about
then,
I'm going to recommend Srimad
and
Bhagavatam.
then Lord Vishnu populates them when Lord Brahma wakes up, just through, you know, he just breathes all the living entities back into the world.
Well, now you might want to read Srimad Bhagavatam, the first three cantos of the first canto. In other words, the first three of the first canto, because I think it will address it in more detail, more than we have time to do here tonight.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So anybody want to read from 23? Anybody?
Ken,
Go ahead.
I'll give it a try.
Give it a shot.
Is that okay?
Yeah, please.
Okay. 23.
Yep.
O best of the Bratas, I shall now explain to you the difference times at which passing away from this world, the yogi does not come back. Those who know the Supreme Brahman attain that Supreme by passing away from the world during the influence of the fiery god in the light at an auspicious moment of the day, during the fortnight of the waxing moon, during the 6 months when the sun travels in the north. 4, 5. The mystic who passes away from this world during the smoke of the night, the fortnight of the waning moon, or the 6 months when the sun passes to the south, reaches the moon planet, and again comes back. According to the Vedic opinion, there are two ways of passing from this world, one in light and one in darkness. When one passes in light, he does not come back. When one passes in darkness, he returns. Although the devotee knows these two paths, O Arjuna, they are never bewildered. Therefore, always be fixed in devotion. The person who accepts the path of devotional service is not bereft of the results derived from the study of the Vedas, performing sacrifices, undergoing austerities, giving charity, pursuing philosophical and fruitive activities. Simply by performing devotional service, he attains all these, and at the end he reaches the supreme eternal abode.
Beautiful. That is beautiful. And if you go back to text 27 and you go to the purport, so it says, although the devotees know these two paths, O Arjuna, they are never bewildered. Therefore, they are always fixed in devotion. Now, this will clarify this for you. Because previously, keep in mind, Bhagavad-gītā is eternal. The Bhagavad-gītā is being spoken in other universes. I mean, this is absolute truth, which lasts forever. So there are different stories in the Srimad Bhagavatam about people who knew this mystic potency and power of transferring the soul at the time of death, and would do that intentionally by performing that yoga program that we talked about, and therefore they determine when to leave the body and what an auspicious moment. But in the purport, Prabhupada says Krishna is here advising Arjuna that he should not be disturbed by the different paths the soul can take when leaving the material world. A devotee of the Supreme Lord should not worry whether he will depart by arrangement or by accident. The devotee should be firmly established in Krishna consciousness and chant Hare Krishna. He should know that concern over either of these two paths is troublesome. The best way to be absorbed in Krishna consciousness is to be always dovetailed in his service, and this will make one's path to the spiritual kingdom safe, certain, and direct. The word yoga yukta is especially significant in this verse. One who is firm in yoga is constantly engaged in Krishna consciousness in all his activities. So do everything that we do in Krishna consciousness. And it's not hard. Everything you see is an expansion of God. God's in every living being. He's as close to you as your own heart. God is actually there in your heart right now. He's also in the spiritual world. He's also in every blade of grass. He's in every atom. You are literally breathing God in the pranayama that you're doing. All of these things are there for God. And even in the Vedic literatures, you see that there's so many ways that you can become conscious of God. Just like all of those soldiers who were fighting on behalf of Dhritarashtra and Duryodhana on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, were absorbed in animosity towards Krishna. They were absorbed in wanting to kill Krishna and Arjuna's armies. And they were all delivered back home, back to Godhead. Because they were focused on Krishna. Kamsa, who wanted Krishna killed, was delivered. Hiranyakashipu, Ravan, all of these great demons that we hear about who were abominable because they were Krishna conscious. They were associated with pure goodness. Everything God does is pure goodness. There's no right or wrong. It's pure goodness. It's good for everyone, all the time, everywhere. All the time. So the idea is that if Krishna is Adi Yagya, or the Lord of sacrifice, then we have to understand that all this belongs to God. None of it belongs to me. Nothing. Don't own a thing. Penniless, it's all God's. Everything, all these resources are provided by God. So let me figure out a way to consciously use those in his service. Now that is the job of the devotee of the Lord. That's the job. That's the job. That's the task at hand. That's the Bhakti Yoga path. That is the Sanatana Dharma, the eternal function of the soul. And although we have been conditioned to believe otherwise by the material world, the fact remains that that is the only real super important thing we all need to be concentrating on all day, every day, without cessation. So remind yourself to chant Hare Krishna, remind yourself to listen to these Vedas. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted our dear friend to have the vedabase.io, because that way they can listen in the car. They can be sure you send those out, Rangavati, so that everybody has that, if you don't mind. Okay, so therefore the devotee is not disturbed by these descriptions because he knows that his passage to the supreme abode is guaranteed by devotional service. So I've heard it said that you may forget Krishna, but Krishna won't forget you. If you're doing devotional service, if you're trying to come to Krishna, if you're laying down your weapons, if you're not really trying to fight the Lord, if you're surrendering to God and you're trying to understand these things and add devotional service to every aspect of your life, offer all your food, always be mindful of Krishna. Start your day out with Krishna, end your day with Krishna. Marinate your life and your mind and your consciousness in Krishna. It's the highest goal of all. There's no higher place or destination or pleasure. And so if that's the case, just having the knowledge that that is the ultimate goal should satisfy us in our curiosity, in this world, because nothing can take the place of that relationship that you had with God. No lesser thing. These are all sparks of God's splendor. Not one single spark will do the job as the whole. So let's take up this Krishna consciousness wholeheartedly, chant Hare Krishna, and go back home, back to Godhead. Just don't stick around for more of this dangerous place. This is a very dangerous place. You could be born in a country that's at war. You know, you could be born in poverty, you could be born in wealth, you could be born in so many things that could distract you from the mission. Right now, you're hearing the straight, absolute truth right out of the mouth of God, uninterpreted as it is. That's what you want. That's all you need. There's nothing more. God is speaking to you directly and explaining to you how to come home. So now it's time for us to get ready to go back home, because it could happen at any moment anyway, right? So are there any further questions, or do you have time for just a small kirtan? I saw Susan's thumb go up. Did anybody else have any other comment or question you want to add before we do a little kirtan? All right. Very, very good. Well, you guys are great, as usual.
Bye, Denise. Denise is leaving us.
Okay, Denise, see ya.
Bye.
Yeah. All right. Okay. I would just do a small kirtan. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Govinda, Jaya Jaya, Govinda Jaya Jaya, Radha Ramana, Hare Govinda Jaya Jaya, Govinda Jaya Jaya, Govinda Jaya Jaya, Radha Ramana, Hare Govinda Jaya Jaya, Govinda Jaya Jaya, Govinda Jaya Jaya, Radha Ramana, Hare Govinda Jaya Jaya, Govinda Jaya Jaya, Govinda Jaya Jaya, Radha Ramana, Hare Govinda Jaya Jaya, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Keep going. Okay, Hare Krishna. I've been having this cough for a few days. Okay, Haribo.
Hare Hare Bo.
So, guys, I really appreciate y'all so much. And I guess we'll pick this up again next week on chapter 9, right? Is that right? So thank you guys so much for attending. If there's no other questions, we're actually going to end this thing almost on time. Isn't that amazing? All right. So thank you guys so much for coming. I really appreciate it. Please contact me if there's any individual questions or anything you guys want to ask. And give me your good association. I'm very grateful for it. Okay. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Next time. All right. Okay. Haribo.